Good morning on this chilly Wednesday morning. Welcome to the Jones Edmonds Engineering Rocks podcast. I'm Ken Vogel, and I'm the Managing Director of Civil Environmental at Jones Edmonds and host of today's show. We've got a great show today and a lot to talk about, so I'll get right into introducing my guest today. Here today is Senator Keith Perry. He represents District 8, which is Alachua County, Putnam County, and parts of Marion County, and has done so for the past 4 years. Prior to that, he was the House Representative for District 21 for 6 years. Senator Perry is from Gainesville, go Gators, and upon graduating Buchholz High School, go Bobcats, he started Perry Roofing Company, a business he still runs today. You know, really being a small business owner and having been in government for the past 10 years, Senator Perry really has a great perspective when he's working on and evaluating the many bills that the Senate sees in each of the sessions. You know, let me ask you, something personal, something, a little bit about yourself, something that's, outside of being, a senator or a contractor.
Well, yes, my background is pretty limited. After high school, my dad was a professor at the University of Florida. That's what brought us to Gainesville. I thought I'd take a year off and just do some other things and then start college up. I started a little business. I knew I'd roof for a friend whose dad was a builder in town. In the summers, hated it, but I made pretty good money doing it. So I started a little business, and that's, 44 years ago now. Matter of fact, I was just looking at a job we did. The first big commercial job we did for Haskell Corporation was a shopping center in Gainesville. I was wondering when that was. That was in 1982 when I did that shopping center, put the roof on that. So I've been doing that a long time. My other passion has been, I deal a lot with prison and work release, and I started a ministry in town called House of Hope. It's a transitional house for men and now women, that when they get released from prison, that we have some kind of a structured environment for them to live and provide them with an opportunity to build relationships outside of where their relationships might have been. Great success. Huge public safety issue when you talk about the recidivism rate now of people who get released from prison. After a 2 or 3 year period, it's about half or more end up going back in prison system, which means we got a lot of victims of crime. Yeah. So any way we can change that direction has been rewarding and certainly a good benefit to society. So short resume, and then run for the House in 2010 and now the Senate. Yeah,
you've been doing some great things. I know a lot about House of Hope, and I know Bob Edmonds is involved with you a lot with that too. So definitely a connection there with Jones Edmonds and Perry and yourself. Well, great. Let's really jump into some of the hot topics. Obviously 2020, crazy year with the COVID-19 pandemic, and we've had a significant impact on the state budget, and really a potential shortfall, unfortunately, going into the session in March. It really seems like there's got to be a tight balance between generating revenue and then also not putting an additional burden on the many suffering businesses and the people and even cities and counties, throughout the state. During the installation message, we heard from Senator President Simpson, that he referred to structural changes in the upcoming budget year. So really, what do you expect to see in the state budgeting process, and how will it differ from past years?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's going to be a big hit. They keep, the estimating conference keeps coming back out with new and revised estimates every month. The good news is that they're getting a little bit better, but the reality is that it's certainly going to be a lot less money in the state coffers. I've got an opinion like everybody else has an opinion. I've always looked at this issue as what I would think is much more balanced than some other people, which is, you take risk in life every single day. Every day you get up and drive to work, you take risk. And so how do we balance that? I tell you what, I feel sorry for other states that are continuing to shut down. I'm really happy with DeSantis and his willingness not to, bow under pressure. I mean, there's only so much money the federal government can print. We know, and if you study that issue, at some point in time, we're going to have a fiscal crisis in the United States. And I think this is exacerbating that issue, that people think that we cannot, we're going to have half of our economy not producing anything, but the federal government's still funding that. Good thing for the state, we can't do that. The state, we live within a balanced budget. And we've also had, ever since I've been up there for 10 years, we haven't had the idea that we're just going to have a balanced budget. We're going to have a fiscally responsible budget. We have not raised taxes or fees in 10 years since I've been there. And what's amazing is if you look at that before the COVID, every single year we've had major increases in the budget simply through growth and letting businesses grow and stuff. So it's going to be a tight one. I'm hopeful that we continue on this modest recovery that we're going through right now. And I think that if we don't come to the pressure and a vaccine comes out, that I think you're going to see some, pent up demand for things to be built and bought. And so I think that we could have some record numbers coming out shortly. We're going to wait and see on that pretty soon though.
Right. Well, even just last week, the governor announced, Florida was awarded additional $28 million in federal funding through the Department of Labor, which, is in response to the COVID-19. So I think that should be a help. What do you see as the vision for Florida as our most pressing need, to really get us out of the COVID issue and any kind of, recession, and hopefully we're, coming out of that too, and that we, find ourselves in at this point.
Yeah. So, and maybe some of you and some of your colleagues will like at least my take on this. Where I see necessity of government is infrastructure and some of the other basic things in education, basic healthcare, and then infrastructure. And so I'm hoping that that the priorities are not stifled in the direction of infrastructure. We still have people moving to our state by the truckload, by the busloads every day. We have people coming here, and people think that we can just continue on is not a viable solution. And so for me, again, owning a business, I think gives me a little different perspective. I'm always about, if you think about a business, if you think about movement of people and materials and equipment, how fast can you get it from point A to point B? How fast and safest can you get it from point A to point B? And so I'm hopeful that the Senate President, and I've got a great relationship with him, and the Speaker of the House, Chris Sprowls, I have a great relationship with him, that we can continue to make investment in those areas that we're way behind anyway, and we just can't get further behind as a state.
And that was going to be one of my questions for you. The American Society of Civil Engineer grades, all states throughout the United States on infrastructure. The grade for Florida, the last time they did it was a C, which is defined as mediocre. And some of the lower infrastructure grades were in wastewater, stormwater, roads and drinking water. So where do you see, what can you do, as a challenge that faces Florida? Where are you going to take us on the infrastructure, funding, this coming year?
And so this I think there's two-pronged approach. One is you have to have the funding, but at the same time, this is where I enjoy working with you guys and your legislative aides and lobbying up in Tallahassee. Is funding is critical, but also, we kind of get judged in Florida as a legislator. We don't get the C grade for the infrastructure. We get an A through F based on how much money we give out. Well, money given out that's not spent wisely doesn't make any sense. And so making sure and working with you guys on what we can do to make projects that get done, how fast can we get them done? How efficient can we get them done? What is the cost in that? What is the redundancy in the regulatory process that we get done? I'm going through a remodel on a building, it, Ken, down in Gainesville, the old Masonic Lodge built in 1908. Oh my gosh. How much energy and time can you spend remodeling a building that's not necessary? That's redundant and antiquated ways to do that. So I think that's a longer term, bigger term approach that we have to look at. And I think from your professional standpoint, look, there's going to be so much money. Can we spend that money wisely and do more projects? We're not going to spend less or more necessarily, but how can we get that so it's a more efficient system? And engineering and studies and environmental impacts and stuff. We all got skin in the game. We all want to protect the environment for long term, but at the same time, we don't want to do things that are not necessary to be done that are inhibiting projects from being completed.
I know infrastructure wise, I know you've been a big advocate of springs protection, and springs projects. So we definitely appreciate that, especially in this area that, you're from, a lot of springs.
But again, just spending money on springs protection doesn't guarantee anything. What we have to do is we have to have some sound policy that the money being spent is fulfilling a mission, and we have goals that are being achieved.
Right, which I know a lot of money spring protection wise goes to septic to sewer systems, which are, you know, a way of protecting the springs and a good way of, you know, spending of money on projects.
Yeah.
Awesome. You know, you mentioned, you know, legislative days and, you know, and coming up and talking to you, you know, as a member of Florida Engineering Society, you know, I really look forward to coming up and meeting with you and, you know, in Tallahassee, as, you know, as well as other senators and, you know, House representatives, as well as many of the city and county, you know, commissioners that come to Tallahassee on, you know, Florida Association of County Days and Florida League of City Days. You know, the purpose of those days are really to help give you input into, you know, legislative process. You know, I know there were some announced changes, you know, coming up for this session. You know, how will that affect all these different legislative days, and, you know, and being able to provide that input, you know, to you and other senators?
Well, there's certainly going to be a damper on that. What I'm going to throw out to you and your colleagues, I'm going to meet with anybody I can anytime they want to do it, as long as I'm allowed to in the Senate. I'm already making arrangements for some office space right nearby the Capitol that we can utilize when the rules of the Capitol get onerous and don't allow that. So I think it's important that we don't, again, there's a balance and between what we do and how safe we can be. But I'm going to meet with you. I'm going to meet with anybody who wants to meet. And if we can't meet in the Capitol, we're going to meet someplace else. So I encourage you don't everybody change your plans and say, well, we're not going to go. Certainly if nobody feels comfortable, that's up to them. But I'll be accommodating as much as I can.
That's good to hear, because, you know, we all know it's important to, you know, get with you, you know, on each session and make sure you understand our, you know, our opinions and our input on the process. So I want to congratulate you. You know, we also heard last week, you know, you were appointed the chair of the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee on Criminal and Civil Justice, as well as the vice chair of the Senate Transportation Committee. And, you know, really big congratulations on that. You know, what do you see as the focus and the goals of those committees?
So this is my first time being an appropriations chair. I wanted Ted approach. I think a lot of people didn't get that, but I'm really excited and honored that the Senate President chose me for the appropriations in my field. So, and I'll be working with the other ones as well. You know, again, it's going to be, I've always said, what are the core responsibilities of government? Let's make sure those are funded adequately and correctly, and then do all the other things. But you can't just say we're going to do across the board cuts on everything. We really got to where we can target cuts that are least important when it comes to the structure of the state. So, you know, we're going to see how that plays out, but I'm excited about being in that room and being in the appropriations at any level gives you a lot of access to other appropriations in other areas, as well as having some influence on that. So excited about it. Yeah,
that's great. You know, you've done well in the Senate, so it's great to see you get these positions, you know, in this upcoming session. We did have a question from Terry Lowry of Jones Edmonds. She said she's asking, you know, Senate President Simpson announced water quality funding will continue to be a priority. You know, do you see an opportunity to develop a dedicated water quality funding source for future project needs?
Well, I think that's every year we come up with one of the issues is how do you have some dedicated sources of funding? I mean, if you look at PICO funding, the Public Education Outlay Funds, they were set up as mainly with landlines on telephones, which has decreased dramatically. And so, and the problem we have now is we have these where it becomes, first off, a major job to get the funding every single year and fight that. It takes a lot of time and distraction that we need to have some of these sources. We say, here's our long-term goals and how can we have some dedicated money and not have to fight it every single year. Now, there's the drawback on that is, you know, I'm an elected today. You know, we got to be careful not to tie the hands of people who are elected in the future and they have no say and there's no discretionary spending on things as things change and you elect new people to come in there. So there's that balance. I think that we have to look at that every year. But I do believe that if you can fight these battles up front, make some really good standards that you can keep in place for a while on these funding mechanisms, and then we can move on and fight other battles. So, every year we'll look at that. And now that, again, back on the appropriation side, I'll have a little bit, being in the appropriation suite will give me a little bit better access to, I think, some of these short and long-term policies.
That's good to hear. Really good. So last session, I know you sponsored numerous bills, that were signed into law, some on senior management, fire preventions and grant programs. A couple of bills really focused on children, early childhood, music education, and Florida Kid Care programs. What bills are you looking at sponsoring this year?
Yeah, and I got a list. Well, so I have a goal. 2 years ago, we filed 39 bills. I told my staff that I have to remind me to say no. And so we went from 39 to 40 bills. This year, I'm going to really try to say no on some of these bills. So that's too many to run. You can't focus on that. And I think it's a disservice to House members and others just to file bills that you can't work on. So I just put a few of the we had in here. We'll have some building design and building codes bill. We kind of look at every single year and look at how we can do that. I've got a bill. It's a pretty simple bill. It's an economic self-sufficiency bill that lets ACA do a study. Right now, if you go in and talk to people who are on different government assistance, they're at certain levels and they get this much care. You could get a 50-cent an hour raise, and all of a sudden now you're knocked out of these programs. And so what you've done is you've designed systems that people are not looking to grow and expand or be moved up, because they're at a level that, why would I get a 50-cent raise to lose 75 cents or $1 an hour in benefits? So we have to look at how do we wean people off and encourage them to go up, but we have to do it in a way. So I ran that bill last year. It hit some snags. I'm going to do it again. I think we'll get it passed this year, just as a study on how we can change that system. I have a pretty big bill on, we passed Amendment 4 a couple of years ago on the civil rights restoration of people to be able to vote. I'm going to file a bill this year that gives full restoration of rights to nonviolent offenders after they meet certain criteria. So people that can now vote will also, once they've met all their criteria, will also be able to run for office, to do other things, to serve on a jury, to be able to carry a firearm. So these are for nonviolent, and it seems like kind of not a very big bill, but if you, back to my thing I talked about House of Hope and public safety, if you look at the studies, and we're compiling all this data from around different states, people who've had their rights restored tend to be less likely to recidivate. And so there's a thing about getting a person whole again and feeling like they're part of society. And I bring all of this back. There's a fiscal side to all of it, to keep people out of there. There's kind of a moral side to keep people from out of jail. And then there's the biggest thing is public safety. Again, if we can keep somebody from recidivating, that means that you and I and other people have not become a victim of a crime, whether it's a property crime or something else. So I'm doing that. I've got another juvenile expunction bill through juveniles that go through a diversionary program that they have their record expunged at completion if a judge orders that. So still working on some of those issues, working on another music and theater bill that allows Gardner scholarships, so parents who have kids under the Gardner scholarship, kids with unique abilities, that allows them to use some of those funds that are allocated for music and theater and some of the other things that really are important, I think, in early childhood education. So that, I've got a preemption of local occupational licensing. Wow, that became so controversial. The different groups, the LGBTQ community, for some reason, thought that I was doing something with that. It got really, it's amazing how news misinformation can spread pretty rapidly and without any factual backup to it. I mean, I got hundreds of calls, emails and stuff. If you ask anybody what part of the bill don't you like, they'll say, well, we just don't like that bill. Well, what part or why? I don't know, but we don't like it. Okay. So what that does, there's two parts we're looking at there now. One is if a state does not require a license for a certain activity, we're going to say a city or county can't require that license. I think Palm Beach is one county that has about 2 pages of stuff. If you're a pressure washer, you have to be licensed, and you're paying more for that county license than I pay for my state license every year. And so, you know, if it's important enough for the state for it to be regulated, I think the state should regulate it. And so we're looking at that. And we're also looking for people who work out of their homes under certain conditions. So, Ken, I don't know if your office or your home, but there's certain counties that would restrict that says, no, you're not going to have an office out of your home. Well, in today's world, a lot of people in professions like yours can work out of home, and they should not be restricted. Now, there's certain things. We're not going to have retail shops in your home and stuff like that, but there's things that city and counties, I think, have become, and I think for a lot of it is it's a fundraising mechanism to charge a lot of money. So anyway, we're looking at that bill again, and we'll file that legislation soon. But I think that's important for, and by the way, just to let you and your audience know, I get accused a lot, especially living here in Gainesville, that I'm take away home rule. Not any bill that I've ever filed, preemption bill, gives the state more power. What it does is it takes it away from cities and counties and gives it back to individuals and businesses. Bottom line. So they can say what they want to say. Matter of fact, the county just passed that growth management bill that takes away the power of the 5 county commissioners, take it away from every single city commission in the county. So the hypocrisy of some of these people is amazing. But I'm going to file. You know, I always look for those kind of bills that decrease some of the government's intrusion when it's not necessary.
Again, that's where your perspective from being a business owner really, you know, comes in. So you know what it's like being on both sides, and you know, being able to help, you know, the communities around you. Yeah, no, that's really great bills you're bringing in this year. You know, I know it's amazing how many bills do come that are created, not just by yourself, but you know, all the senators. So it's good to see, and some of the ones you have there are really, really good and really beneficial.
Yeah, and we'll have a bunch more we're going through. We have a big insurance omnibus bill that really cleans up a lot of stuff. We'll have quite a few more bills that we're still looking at. We're trying to narrow that down. Our goal is to look at things that A, are going to have a big impact, and B, what can we get done? It doesn't do us any good to file bills that aren't going to get passed. And so what has the biggest impact, what can get done, and that's what we're going to concentrate our efforts on.
Correct. Awesome. So let me change topic a little bit. You know, last session, you know, engineering wise, you know, and really for cities and counties, the Consultants Competitive Negotiation Act, CCNA, as we call it for short, you know, was really modified to help cities, counties, municipalities by increasing maximum limits on continuing, you know, professional contracts covered under CCNA. You know, raised construction costs of a project from $2 million to $4 million, and you know, studies from $200,000 to $500,000. You know, we appreciate your support on that. You know, from the engineering community wise. I know we've received positive feedback from the municipalities that we work with. You know, what have you heard, or have you heard any feedback from the municipalities, you know, within your district?
Yeah. So when we filed that legislation, we heard a little bit. Mainly, I do some work at the University of Florida, not under those circumstances, but you know, they were in favor of it. Certainly, your group was, and the construction industry was. So I think it's important. You know, what we want to do is, again, it gets back to an efficiency standpoint. If you're going to find somebody that you're going to go through that whole process, the competitive process, and negotiating the contract. To be able to keep that continuing longer and for more money, especially, I don't think it was revised in the last 10 or more years or something. I can't remember how long it was. So, you know, I thought that was an important bill. We tried that took a couple of years to get things passed, but to finally get that done was important. So, yeah, things like that, you know, we'll see what other ones come up later.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a benefit. You know, really, it reduces, like you say, it's efficiency wise, it's way more efficient for cities and counties. You know, we're not going out for RFQs every other week now. You know, it's going to eliminate some of that and really, you know, get some of these bigger projects, you know, under continuing contracts. So we appreciate that.
Sure.
So, Senator, you know, it's been a tough year so far. You know, thankfully we're in December, and you know, we're all thinking about the future of next year. You know, really, probably going to take a lot of us working together, the state and local governments, businesses, private industry, really working together to move Florida in the right direction, So how do you see us doing that, moving forward in 2021?
Yeah, I'm pretty optimistic. I'm glad we live in Florida and not some of the other states. Can't control things on a federal level. I know all of our attention seems to turn to on a federal level. And, I encourage you, of course, you and your group do a really good job. You can have a whole lot more influence on a state level than you can on a federal level. And so, your advocacy on the issues is real important. I'm optimistic. I think DeSantis is on the right track. I think the guy, super smart. If you think about coming into that position, it's tough. I mean, it's an overwhelming position to be in, and he's done a great job. And I think the next couple of years, he's really going to hit his stride. He's got that. I'm real optimistic. Wilton Simpson, the Senate president, business background. I was his second and gave a speech nominating him on the Senate floor. We have similar backgrounds, and so he's a pretty pragmatic guy. Chris Sprouse, Speaker of the House, again, attorney. They're not all bad. Most of them are, but not every one of them. But Chris is a great guy. He's a real solid guy, very smart, pragmatic thinker. So if you look at the main leadership, there's a lot to be excited about. I think that we have the battles every year. The trial attorneys, by the one you mentioned, the C grade for infrastructure. We are ranked 49th out of 50 in tort issues. So we have a dismal record for that. And I think that's one of the biggest issues facing the state, because if you think about the economy, we have a three-legged stool. We have construction, we have agriculture, we have tourism. And you can see the tourism right now and how much that hurts the state of Florida. Manufacturing is critical. And manufacturing today, when you mention that word, gets a lot of bad ideas. People obviously don't understand manufacturing in today's world, which is CNC machines and robotics and AI. And but there's no way we're going to get a Mercedes dealership or a BMW plant that has billions and billions of dollars in infrastructure plus super high paying jobs for blue collar workers. You're not going to get that kind of market down here as long as we have some of the still structural problems we have. And tort reform is one of the absolute biggest issues that we face from the liability. Why would you invest billions of dollars in a state that you are going to have to spend, however much in legal fights every single year? And if you talk to site selectors, you can go down a site selector list and you can look at the things that depended on their industry, what's important to them and how do they weight those. And so we're going to, that's a battle I fight every year, but it's going to be a continued one that we fight. And we'll see. Hopefully, we'll make a little more progress. We make little steps every year, but they're pretty small.
Yeah. Well, I'm all out of questions, but if you have any closing statements you'd like to make, or anything you want to, tell the audience,
I just say, yeah, you guys are important. Your advocacy for the issues, your expertise in these issues are critically important. One of the things that you can help me with is we'll continue to do what you do. Again, I just encourage everybody to think about how do we make the whole, whatever dynamics you're in, more efficient. If we're going to spend X amount of money, say on bridges or roads or water quality issues, we're going to spend that money. Can we do 10 projects? Can we do 20 projects? And so we may take some redundancy out of some of the requirements in your field, but that would give you the opportunity to do more projects because, limited money, and how can we make that go, the best for you and I and for the next generation. So keep fighting. I'm here. And plus, Ken and other people listening, there's a lot of other issues that affect you outside of your profession. They can be education, it can be healthcare, they can be whatever. So if y'all ever want to talk about those things as on a group level or an individual level, we're certainly available, and we need your impact. If I don't know what you are going through, it's hard for me to address those. So reach out on any issue, and like I say, we'll be open for business up in Tallahassee, maybe off campus, but we'll be open.
That's great to hear, because I do know how important it is, and I guess a lot of people just don't realize how important it is to talk to your representatives and your senators on a regular basis, not just in Tallahassee, but back when you come back to your offices back in your home district, just as important. So,
well, let me add just one thing to that, Ken. I would encourage everybody for you to go to Tallahassee or home and take somebody who's kind of diametrically opposed to your vision and your beliefs and your principles. You can explain and have all the data that you want, and you're likely not to get them to be sympathetic or understanding to you. Or maybe they're sympathetic, but they're not gonna change their ways. The key is electing people that have an understanding of some of the things that are necessary for the state to survive. And so, you want to have a relationship? Go find a state rep. Go find a city commissioner or county commissioner, a state senator. You find a congressman. If anybody was going to work on Kat Kamick, who took over Ted Yoho's congressional seat, if someone would have volunteered an hour a week to work with them, guess what? Into the campaign, you're going to have their cell number, and they're going to have your cell number, and you're going to have a relationship that's built in. So every politician is always looking for friends in the campaign. Post that, it gets real busy and difficult, and you might not have as much influence on a social, just having that personal relationship. So working, first off, it's important to get people elected that understand issues. And second off, like I say, you do yourself a great service by having that relationship pre-election than trying to build a post-election.
Well, Senator Perry, I really appreciate you being here today. Great conversation, great talk. Really appreciate it. If anyone has any questions, you could always email me at kvogel@jonesedmonds.com. I am Ken Vogel, and this has been the Jones Edmonds Engineering Rocks podcast. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next month.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you.